Wednesday, 9 a.m. The City Council meeting at City Chambers. And are the microphones on? Hello, hello.
I think they are.
They're on.
Hello.
They're on.
Okay. We have the invocation by Brad Rogers from First Presbyterian Church. Please rise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councilmen and women, and thank you all for gathering. Would you bow your heads and hearts with me and join me in prayer? Good morning, Lord. We give you thanks and praise because the very fact that we are here is a gift from you. We thank you, O Lord, for our life, our breath, and everything else that you give us. And we've gathered today to take seriously the work that is ahead of us, and we ask and seek your wisdom in all decisions that will be made. We lift to you our community, which 3 weeks ago today was barraged by Hurricane Ian. We ask, O Lord, that you would continue to be with this community, that you would lead the leaders of this community in all different sectors to work collaboratively in unity together so that we might bring healing and restoration to our community. We thank you, O Lord, for the various individuals that you have sent from far and wide in the form of different relief organizations that have descended upon us, the Red Cross and Samaritan's Purse. We are grateful for their help. And Lord, we know that there is a long road ahead of us. So we pray for our community, and we give you thanks, Lord, for the first responders who have given of their time and energy tirelessly to do search and rescue. We pray for them and their families, that you would restore them and rebuild them. And we ask, O Lord, that you would lead this community into the future. We lift to you the work that is before us today and pray for your wisdom and counsel and unity. And we pray these things in the name of the God in whom I trust. Amen.
I pledge of allegiance on the count of three. 1, 2, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Debbie, a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Here.
Councilman Purdon.
Here.
Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Here.
Councilman Corey.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here.
Okay, everybody's approved of the agenda items today.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just make two quick comments for the public. There are two items in the back of the room, if you haven't picked up. One is there are a handful of changes to the lease agreement, reflecting some name changes, some clarifications, and other items. I will be reading those into the record so that there's more clarity, but if you want to go to the back and get a copy for yourself to look, please do so. There's also another copy of an executive order at the back of the meeting. This was, we forgot to put this into the packet. This was regarding permitting plans. This will be as an item on consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Okay, Mayor, welcome. Well, I'm glad to see people got out of bed and come to see us today. We are the closest thing to you as a government body, and I really like to see the people come out and voice their opinion. Proclamations and presentations.
Mr. Mayor, public comment on agenda items.
Number 7. Public comment on agenda items.
And I would ask if anyone is here to speak on the public hearing item, which is the Barron Collier lease agreement, please hold your comments till that time. So these would be comments on the consent agenda, the proclamations, any of the city attorney items, or any of the other items that are on the agenda other than the Barron Collier lease.
Okay, proclamations.
Mr. Mayor, we have one.
Yeah, I think this fits, but if it doesn't, you can send me home. Anyways, I'm here today, Ron George from Little Hickory Island area, and as the president of C-Shape Condominiums of Little Hickory Island, I'm really here to thank the city leaders and staff for their dedication in addressing the needs of the residents of Little Hickory Island and all the other residents within the city. Special thanks goes to the first responders and the sheriff's deputies, et cetera. Several helped me on Thursday and Friday actually extracting some of our last residents that were very hesitant to leave, and we had to coax them out, but I really appreciate all that. I was very impressed with the organization, the professionalism, the dedication, and most of all, the kindness displayed by all of the individuals that were helping the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any other public comment at this time? Okay, we have a presentation. Proclamation and presentations. Arlene Hunter, please come forward. Yeah, do I get a microphone? I don't need
Right
a
here.
microphone.
No, sir. Here you go, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is an appropriate time for proclamation. Whereas the city of Bonita Springs will be joining cities throughout the state to celebrate Florida City Government Week. And whereas city government is government closest to most people and one with the most direct daily impact upon its residents. Therefore, Florida City Government Week is a very important time to recognize the important role played by city government in our lives. And thereas this week offers an important opportunity to spread the word to all the citizens of Florida that they can shape and influence this branch of government. And whereas the city of Bonita Springs has taken this opportunity to engage residents to become more involved in city government by focusing on communications about city committees, meetings, community events, and annual student government activities and educational programs. Therefore, I, Rick Steinmeier, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 17th to 21st as Florida City Government Week in the city of Bonita Springs, with the hope that all citizens join us in this celebration. At this time, I'd like to recognize Arlene Hunter, our city manager, who, I don't know if you ever had a boss in your life, you ought to have her as your boss. You just love to work for her.
Mayor, if you'd offer me the opportunity, I would like all our city employees to come forward, please, with me. So if all you don't know, I have twin 8-year-olds, and at Sunday school, my daughter made me this. And this just shows you the teamwork and the strength that this team does, because they lift me. And for them, from mom and from mom here to all of you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go, and I'm behind you wherever you go. Thank you. Ron, could you take one so Addison can be one? Come on, Derek. Come on.
Oh,
Come on.
Come on, Derek. Don't break the camera, Derek. Work for mom. Here, I'm going to stand.
Oh, John, come on. All right, hurry up, hurry up.
Say Bonita.
You need a strong.
Thank you, sir. Well done.
Well done.
Did both. My stylist.
Well, that was exciting. And they've been working 7 days a week since the storm, so I really appreciate their effort, and we all in this strong city of Bonita Springs we have thanked them, and we will continue to support their efforts in this city. So thanks again. Okay. Consent agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have one for discussion, but we can vote for all of them, okay?
Okay.
I want to pull the one on the water steward for discussion only,
Okay,
but we could vote on all of them.
you have a second? We had a second?
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Okay, comment?
I just want to comment, and there was the extent of the service that we're going to be getting from our water steward, and one of the lines said that reports should be given on a regular basis to the council, and I don't believe we've been getting those at all for the year that we've had this water steward operating, so I think that that's an important emphasis in the contract, that some kind of regular reporting directly to the council. I'm sure that it's being given to the staff. And in fact, I would like to hear a report given post-Eon. So I'm in favor of the contract, but we need to have better transparency there.
Well, thanks, Amy.
I've got
Okay,
I've got comment on that.
yes, sir.
I've had, the privilege of going out with our water steward, I don't know, 7 times just this year. She's out there multiple times a day every week. She's given Matt Feeney extensive reports that I've seen. I agree. Maybe she could come, like we have the LCSO come every now and then give us an update. But I assure you, I've been out there and she's working her tail off for us.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to have the reports given to the council.
I hear you.
And we need one now, soon. That's what I'm
So you're
asking.
still voting for it?
I already voted. I said
No
I'm-
debate, no debate, come on now.
I'm just clarifying the comment.
Yeah, okay, all righty. Okay, do we have any items from the mayor and council? I don't see any.
All right, at this time, then I will read the next item is mine, and this is a final reading and public hearing and ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs authorizing the lease of real property known as Imperial Crossing in the Old 41 downtown and providing for an effective date. Council and the public, this is the culmination of, a 2-year effort with Barron Collier, a 3-year effort overall with when the city put the property up for RFP. Part of that, those original offerings, the Magnuses and the food truck park that's moving forward was the first successful offering on that. We then had in May of 2021, a unsolicited offer under the Florida's public-private partnership statute from Barron Collier to look at a park development and mixed-use project for the Imperial Crossing property. That culminated in several workshops and an interim agreement. We've been working since June of 2021 to memorialize the terms of those agreements as have been presented to you numerous times. I would like to, as you saw, the draft that went out in the original packet was marked as a draft, And the reason for that is, as CBRE finalized their reports, they had some recommendations that we discussed with Barron Collier and their capitalization partners. Went back several terms, but the major change in that was that the base rent went from a 10-year adjustment phase to a base rent that compounds annually with a 2.5% increase. What this primarily did, in the opinion of CBRE, is it creates a floor so that the city has a guaranteed revenue stream. And from a revenue bonding perspective, when we look at our accounting, when we go out to bonds for revenue bonds, these are not the bonds that are voted on in referendum, but any other kind of borrowing, we can then put that as a guaranteed revenue stream in our ledger. So it increases the city's bonding capacity. That was very important to CBRE that got in. I agree that was very important. So we made those changes. Those changes went from 2%, we discussed over the weekend, to going to 2.5%, which actually exceeds historical inflation rates, so that the city has some protection, and it needed some time for Barron Collier and their partner to make sure that was doable for them. We came into that agreement, so that has been cleaned up so that the base rent provisions and the percentage rent provisions and all the calculations associated with that should be much clearer, more transparent to the city and to the public. With those changes, then of course, we had a few additional changes with respect to assignment. So what I'd like to do, if you have a moment, I'd like to go through all the changes, the material changes for the public. There are only a handful, but I would like to explain where those came from. And one significant material change, which I'll ask Barron Collier to speak on, but I actually recommended that they put it in the agreement rather than having something come up later on and address it. So what I'd like to do is just start with page 1 of the agreement, the marked up agreement you have in front of you. The special purpose entity that Barron Collier is using, the LLC essentially for the corporation, it's just the name. It is Barron Collier DT Bonita. That'll be the actual entity signing on behalf of Barron Collier. That's on page 1 of the lease. On page 11 of the lease, and that's what I'll ask Barron Collier discussed, is they are asking to have a financial contingency given the current state of the markets through the due diligence phase and into the entitlement phase. So this basically means that if there was some issue that needs changes or amendments in the agreement, that it's clear up front that these are something that they want to have a contingency in there in case they're unable to get financing for the vertical construction. And a great deal of that is related to, and I've confirmed with CBRE, the current pricing of construction costs. We're agreeing to a standard. We've reviewed it based on a standard, which is, concrete and steel, not wood frame construction, but something built to last. The final numbers for those, Barron Collier won't have those cost estimates until this lease estimate is signed, and so they can go hard on those costs. So that's on page 11. On page 12, you have the revised base rent calculation, as I discussed, and including an example there. There's also an updated example on Exhibit I in the agreement, which shows the payment over time, and I believe CBRE calculated it as an additional $4 million in base rent over the period. On page 27, 28, 33, and 34, I made some clarifications on assignment. This is just to make sure that if there's an assignment of the property and after the property stabilized, and it goes to any other entity, whether it is a mortgage holder or another entity that buys it, that there is some reasonable assurances that the city gets to sign off on those, on assignees, that they're financially secure, that they're not an entity that has been in litigation or has convictions of any crime. Those would require the city sign off. All other sign-offs require that the obligations, particularly the financial obligations, that the prior tenant, Barron Collier, had continue on with the new tenant. So basically, in the case of, say, a bankruptcy, if a new trustee or someone is assigned to take over the property, in such case, the money owed to the city at that time would still be owed to the city. The next changes after that are condemnation clarifications, and that's on page 37 and 38. And there's an additional change I'm going to read into the record now, which is item C, actually where the first sentence where it says section 3.2, immediate words afterwards, wherein this lease is terminated, should be crossed out. That's my error. And but what that basically says is Baron Collier, as a 99-year leaseholder, has the same rights in a condemnation proceeding as any other property owner. And so we had some clarification what would happen, and I'm not suggesting, even though there are some representatives here, if BSU condemned a piece of the property and had to pay condemnation costs, an award to the city, there would be payments to the city as well as to Baron Collier to the effect it might have on their project. So that was clarified. And then on page 39 and 40, we requested that there was accelerated rent provision in the event of a default. The city wanted to have the ability to accelerate all rent payments, to have them pay and due immediately. Baron Collier was concerned that accelerating the rent on a 99-year lease may be extreme, so we agreed to 1-year acceleration terms. So that's been clarified. And then the final clarification is on page 43 with respect to hazardous materials. Baron Collier has agreed to indemnify the city against any damages as a result of hazardous materials. There was one word we took out, which is invitees, which means that the Baron Collier will indemnify the city against claims, even claims by the public against the city, but not the public individuals themselves directly, which is appropriate. So those are the changes. I see that Baron Collier is here. I'd ask them to speak on anything they wish to address, as well as to address the financial contingency change.
Hello, City Councilors. Good morning. This has been an interesting process. We spent quite a bit of time in the last couple of weeks with CBRE and your city manager and your city attorney to kind of go through this. As you can imagine, the only thing that's really changed in the financial market since we started this project is interest rates have gone up about 3 or 4%, as well as the loan-to-value requirements. If you go to do commercial lending right now, the downside of a commercial lease for us to go to the markets is the banks will look at this asset and say it's impaired as it's a lease, we don't own it. So they've changed in the last 6 to 12 months their loan-to-value requirements. Typically 70% is what a company that's credit rated like us could achieve. Now they're reducing that by 20 to 30%. So you can imagine that's an interesting time to be in right now. That said, the change allows us to go through the financial process leading up to after the entitlement period. Through the entitlement period, as I mentioned to Derek and Arlene, we're going to spend close to $1 million. So you're in. Between all the vertical design and horizontal design that you're going to do through that process, it's not something you're going to walk away from after you do it. And if you did, the city's got a beautiful entitled property that then they can then market at their leisure to somebody else. So that contingency just allows us to go out and figure out what the financial conditions are going to be when we actually go to finance the project. Two other things I'll point out. CBRE, and I think maybe Derek might have covered this, did the review. Found it was a good deal for the city. They made some changes and your staff made some changes that we didn't like, but it was probably better for you. We had the base rent that Councilman Corey, you asked for, that was put in there, and we did a 10-year review and then adjusted it. They've asked for a compounding interest annually. It started out that we suggested 2%. They negotiated 2.5%. We begrudgingly agreed to that. We think we can put that into the pro forma. So what's changed from your staff and CBRE's perspective is only get a little bit better for you in terms of that. I heard Derek read in the changes. Those are the things we just talked about the last week, and a lot of that had to do with conversations we had with the financial institutions we're talking to already, just to be able to make it financeable to do the project. But we're excited. I think everybody is. Not want to be in this position right after a hurricane, but we think the entitlement process will take you through 12 to 14 months, and we think the world will be in a better place hopefully by then. Financially, it'll stabilize. The construction market should stabilize. And we're excited to work with you and your team on getting this project out of the ground.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And with the motion, what I would recommend now is, if you have any questions while Nick's available, you can either ask them now or hold them to after the public comment, whatever the council's choice.
We should probably go last.
What's that?
We should probably go last, because if they come up with something, we have to be able to at least respond to them. So if they go
Or
first.
not, you don't.
Let me ask Derek for some
Sure.
clarifications. Derek, for
Wait a minute now. We have public comment now.
No.
Any questions for Nick? We can ask questions. How about lining up for public comment on this item? Now line up, please. Don't be bashful.
No, over there, sir.
Over to the podium. Identify yourself.
Private citizen taping.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Jude Richvale from District 5 in Old Bonita. I'm here to speak about the Baron Collier proposal. Some in council have argued that we live in a representative form of democracy, and this justifies any decision they make, regardless of what the people say. Yet, we have this form because we can't fit all 50,000 citizens in one large room to vote on every issue. But that's exactly what they did in ancient Greece. Let all the citizens gather in one room and vote. Representative democracy, excuse me, was not meant to exclude the will of the people between elections. That is why we see frequent national polls about controversial issues. One councilman has claimed that 90% of the people support this boondoggle. If that is so, then what is the harm in waiting 2 weeks until after the election? A vibrant democracy depends on the goodwill of the people. Let us wait and see if there is indeed genuine public support. The Baron Collier plan for downtown is fraught with problems. Where is the parking space for 240 cars needed for residents plus guests and proposed businesses? Where is the extra bridge over the Imperial River to support the traffic it will create? Another problem is the site is a floodplain. Elevating the site to the required 11 feet to meet the code could flood lower surrounding properties in a storm. We have just seen the awesome power of water and wind. Have we learned nothing? A downtown is the soul of a city. The riverfront area is a natural jewel at the center of our downtown. Let's not hurry to make it a pale imitation of Naples. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Morning, Council. My name's Gary Price. I live at 27300 Matheson Avenue. It was under my watch as the original city manager that the city purchased this property. I took the job in Bonita for 2 reasons. It's sort of a culmination of a 40-year career in local government to start a city from scratch. And when we started, Paul Pass and I had nothing, literally nothing. In fact, I funded the city for the first couple of weeks because we didn't get a bank account. We didn't have a bank account for the county to give us the money because we didn't have an employee identification number, and you have to have an employee identification number to have a bank account. So I actually funded the city for the first couple of weeks. The second reason I came here was because the underutilization of Old 41. Where I came from, it had a cute downtown, but it had not changed by the time I was there for about 30 years. There were other attractions that drew people to where I came from, and secondary was they would go to lunch. Well, Old Bonita was totally underutilized. When they moved US 41, they abandoned Old Bonita in the early 70s, and there were a lot of vacant and underutilized properties. And I thought it's a dream come true that I can be involved in the proper utilization of all of that underutilized property. I didn't know how it was going to happen at the time, and then all of a sudden the old bamboo trailer park became available. That accomplished 2 goals. One was to get rid of an eyesore, a dilapidated, basically a facility where they should have stationed a sheriff's deputy down there all the time, and also to provide an opportunity for the city to kickstart the redevelopment of Old 41. So there was 2 phases of my dream as city manager of Bonita, starting a city from scratch and being able to facilitate the utilization of underutilized property and create something unique in Southwest Florida. It's not going to be like Naples, it's not going to be like Fort Myers, it's not going to be like Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach. It's going to be totally Bonita. I urge you to approve this agreement so we can get on with this much too long delayed process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Wiebold. I live at 10390 River Drive. And I originally had planned to stand here and read sections of the ordinances, the historic ordinances, and from the comprehensive plan that totally are antithesis to what this project looks like. But that all got flooded in my house a couple weeks ago. So this is just kind of off the cuff. I bought my house in 2004, and one of my main reasons of wanting to move to Bonita was because the owners of that house told me about all the plans that were happening downtown. I saw the newspaper, which I actually had from 2004, with the beautiful renderings of what it could be, and it was really exciting to me because I had been involved in historic preservation and moving houses and all kinds of things in the past. But I'm not against progress. I'm totally not against progress, but the renderings that they are showing now, I just don't understand. I don't understand putting more people on the river that could possibly be displaced like I am right now because of flood, and it makes no sense to me. I can't wrap my mind around why you would put so much density in a place that floods like that. I never thought my house would flood. In 64 years that it's been sitting there, I had no idea, but 3 feet of water in my house. So, and I'm a few hundred yards down the river from the proposed land. So I'm not against the progress. I don't know how you would proceed without having these particular plans. I'd like to see something that's a little more historic looking, something that will blend in with the current downtown, not 4-story buildings that look so modern. The thing looks just so modern. I can't understand it. You want to keep, you say historic Bonita Springs? Well, it's not going to be. And that will be the first step. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor, Council, I'm Charlie Strader. I've lived on the banks of both the Upper and Lower Imperial River for over 44 years. Thank you and staff for your efforts to help with Hurricane Ian disaster. Regarding Imperial Crossing, I am surprised it's on the agenda today considering all that's going on in the city. I realize it may be too soon for what I have to say as many people are still suffering. However, that is the reason for government, to protect, serve, and plan for its people. As you know, our city's comprehensive plan is your guidebook. In particular, in the conservation and coastal management element, there's objective 5.2, quote, "The city shall minimize flood risk that results from high tide events, storm surge, flash flood, stormwater runoff, and related impacts of sea level rise in the coastal management area." Just because the downtown district was later exempted from some of its policies does not negate the reasoning or reality. There are reasons the rivers and creeks are in the coastal high hazard zone, as clearly demonstrated by both Hurricanes Ian and Irma. Why would you even permit, let alone subsidize, adding residential density along our river? Knowing that the Bamboo Village parcels flooded twice in 5 years, it is unbelievable to many that you would still want to add about 3 acres of impervious surfaces on public land, let alone small town charm and compatibility with the neighborhood, traffic, or parking concerns. Where's your concern for the environment, the wonder gardens, and tourism, or policies regarding adding public access to our waters? No other Florida city is privatizing their public waterfront lands, which are considered amenities to their cities. There are public uses that can be designed to not endanger people. The river, the estuary, be designed to flood, improve stormwater management, allow for pervious parking, and attract tourists to downtown. Your premise that in a growing city, you need to subsidize private development on taxpayers' owned land in order to spur more development downtown is counter to sustainable urban planning and common sense. There are more suitable places in Bonita for private apartments. With the density of 20 units per acre, along with no affordable housing requirements that you have already laid downtown, more development will come soon enough. Please do not be the council to ruin the old Florida character of downtown. You proclaim to represent what the people of Bonita want. Why will you not ask them? Most in town don't even know what you're planning to do. They have other things going on. The taxpayers deserve better. The questionable lease and unpopular Imperial Crossing project, which does not cross the river, removes the only boat ramp on the upper river, leaves a seawall, turns public space into private, and also ignores many of your own have and have-nots. Florida is replete with bad development decisions. What will history record of yours? Thank you for your time and good luck with the storm.
Thanks, Charlie. We really shouldn't applaud. It inhibits the other people. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bob Wilson. I live in the Hawthorne community. And I'm here because the council plans to go ahead with the BCC current lease reading and vote today, just 20 days before the election, as some other people have said. This despite the significant opposition to building high-rise apartments on this location and the negative impact that it's bound to have, as demonstrated by the last two hurricanes. You know, the average citizen has a hard time understanding why, on the one hand, the city continues to negotiate buyouts of individual homes in low-lying areas that have flooded in the past, like the Quinn Street area, and on the other hand, thinks it's a good idea to take this unique property and put 4-story apartment buildings in there that would house 120 families right on the river. Can they expect with the next hurricane that the first floor will flood, electrical and mechanicals will be out, elevators will be down, and the big, beautiful swimming pool will be part of the river? All the while maybe praying that their cars don't float out of the parking lot. And speaking of the swimming pool, it's on the north side of the river. How are the people in the apartment building on the south side supposed to access that? There's no footbridge across. Are they going to get in their cars and drive up to the north side and try to park there? Well, those spots are all allocated for the north side people. Or are they supposed to walk down Wilson and up Old 41 over the bridge and make that trek? And why is the swimming pool up against Old 41 in the first place with all the attendant vehicle traffic, noise, and pollution? Doesn't seem like a great spot to sunbathe to me. And next, we have the river separating the two park areas. How are people supposed to easily access both parks, as each seems to have different purposes with, once again, no footbridge to cross the river and very little public parking? So can we then conclude that these public parks will likely primarily be used by the apartment dwellers? Additionally, the mayor and council, you guys paid a consultant to lead you through a process defining your desires for developing this property. You developed a priority list of wants and don't wants, and if you remember, the number one item at the top of the don't want list was no majority residential and high-rise monolithic buildings. Yet as soon as BCC proposed this as the only viable way for them to make money, you all jumped on it despite not even coming close to your overall downtown vision plan. And your priority list from that previous exercise. So we're left to wonder, why is that? And it appears to me that the easy route is to let BCC develop this because they can put up their own money, do the design, and all it requires is a little oversight
from the city. However, and some of this may have been addressed by Nick this morning, it seemed that as I was looking at this, every iteration there were more dollars that the city was suggested they might have to pay, even as much as the cost of building the park. Maintenance was always to be shared. And there were other items as well, but then I just read the CBRE, and hold on, they said that that the city will now be gifted that park from Baron Collier. And that, along with the base rent and a few other things, do make the financials look better.
Thank you, sir. Time's up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Alexander P. Grant, former city council member. And here is, you know that I have been with the University of Florida Soils and Water Department, and they recommended a geologist to look at the flooding potential of this property, a serious flooding potential because of the 3 underground rivers that are on the south side of this property, plus Lightner Creek on the north side. This is a very environmentally sensitive property from a scientific standpoint. Remember, force equals mass times acceleration. If you have 8.4 pounds per gallon of water, and you have 1 million gallons of water in the Imperial River going at 100 miles per hour in a hurricane, do you know the force of that? You are putting in residential units that are bound to be hit devastatingly by such force of water. We have not to forget that we have water coming from the Kissimmee River Valley, sheet flow that comes into the Imperial River. This water is going all the way into the bay and into the Gulf. If you have a direct hit hurricane and you have heavy water coming from the other side, this is going to cause an extremely dangerous, catastrophic situation to any residential property that is being built on that property. This is not a 100-year flood. We have had 5 major floods on that property in the last 100 years. And we have climate change, right? And we had an article here in the last edition of the Bonita Banner all about building in flood-prone areas. You should read this before you make any decisions.
Thank you, Alex.
Morning, Council. For the record, my name is Nigel Fullick. I've been a 20-year resident of Bonita Springs and a business owner. I wanted to start with the public comment first. I wanted to combine it to both. I've heard some disturbing comments over the last few weeks about the response of our city and county staff to Hurricane Ian. I'd like to give my comments, which are those of someone who's actually been through 7 or 8 major hurricanes, who lost both my home now that have been building for a year and 8 months, and the one I'm living in is flooded. And I would tell you very honestly that I am amazed at the response of our city staff and the amazing job that they did. It was great to see them all appear and acknowledge today, but what people don't realize is that a number of these people, including our city manager, they were on the job the very next day, even though they lost their homes. And I think some of the people that are sitting at home and don't pay attention need to know that. Our staff did the best job of anybody in Lee County, maybe Collier as well. Arlene and the staff, thank you. Sheriff Marcino, and Lee County Deputy Sheriffs, why didn't we have looting in Bonita Springs? Because they did a phenomenal job, and I heard about complaints of strange cars speeding up and down the beach and down at Old Hickory. Well, that was because the sheriff brought in Pasco County, Hollywood Police, there were a number of law enforcement agencies. They had that all projected. Even though we were all getting ready to go up and help the folks up north, they were here to take care of us. John Jenkins and Bonita Springs Utilities, only city that had drinking water immediately after the storm and water pressure. And when the pumping stations, I can't remember how many went down because they were flooded, they were out there. That's taken care of as well. Phenomenal job by Bonita Springs Utilities. Finally, the lady that we all know, Terry LeMaine, little quiet thing, that works at Bonita Springs Assistance Office, they served thousands of families during the hurricane. Did an amazing job. I was over there with some of my friends, and I can't believe what they did for our community. If you see her, you should thank her. So my second commentary is on Bamboo Village project. Tempted as I may be, respond to some of the opinion pieces directed at you, our Bonita Springs City Council, the staff, and candidates over the past several weeks. The sole purpose of my commentary is to ask that you not bow to a minority of dissenters to the downtown project. The development of Bonita Springs Utilities, carefully articulated and well articulated by Gary Price, was a vision of our founders. Let's not forget that we would have completed the Bamboo Village project over 10 years ago if not for the collapse of our economy in 2008. Here we are, a decade later, with a respected, financially sound, local developer who has a successful track record of similar projects that's ready to bring an even better version to reality. Barron Collier representatives have listened to council and citizens who've been involved for over a year and provided a plan and revisions, multiple revisions, that would be acceptable to most reasonable people. We all know that if you put 5 people in a room in Bonita Springs and ask them to come up with the downtown plan, you'd have 5 different versions. That's just people. I apologize. The majority of the investment in downtown has been from local citizens and business owners who believed that this council, you, were finally going to get it done. I have no personal or professional relationships with anyone at Barron Collier, and despite other comments, I have not had any contributions to my campaign from Barron Collier, nor would I accept them. I'm asking you strictly as a homeowner, a businessman, and someone who loves this community to complete the journey and leave a legacy of accomplishment for your fellow citizens. I also ask that you listen to the vast majority of citizens who still believe Bamboo Village is moving forward. It's time for a few squeaky wheels to be silenced. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nigel?
Good morning, council and staff. Chris Magnus from Rooftop at Riverside. I'd like to echo some of Mr. Fullick's comments in thanking staff and council. We got, you guys kept the public informed with many different emails, and you guys came and you worked every single day despite your own personal losses. So thank you so much for all your efforts for our community. And I'm here today to ask that you continue to work for our community, vote for this project. Let's move it forward. You guys have had multiple meetings, multiple workshops on the form-based code, which tells us what the options are for what this building will look like. We're in the 11th hour here. Please do not allow your courage to falter or fail. If we rely on fear pandering, we never would have conquered the oceans. We never would have explored space. Keep your courage. Move this project forward. Don't allow fear to prevail in this instance. We're so thankful for all your work. We're so thankful for your vision for the city and for our community. And we are so thankful to have the city staff here to finish the job that they started. Do the vote today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Vince Waterhouse. I've lived in Bonita for 28 years, and I've had a business on Old 41 for about 20 years. And when I first started there, I was next door to Benson's, and it was a run-down, dilapidated part of town, and it was good for me because I teach self-defense. So, yeah, rah-rah. And I would never recommend anybody to move anywhere near there. So recently, my son came down from New York, been up there for 8 years, was married and came back here because they shut down New York. And I recommended that he move into those yellow apartments on Dean Street because you ladies and gentlemen over the past, 4 or 5 years or so, have developed that area, and it's just a great place to live. You can walk out of there and you can go to the brewery across the street and the pizza place next door, and it's just lined with nice things. Right now I'm in Hawthorne Shops, and I'd like it if you could build that area up too. So it's really a good place. As far as Barron Collier goes, every project that they've done has added value to communities, has added value to residences, has added value to businesses, and they wouldn't get involved in a business like this knowing that it's going to flood next year. Yeah, let me put all this money in here and it's going to flood next year. So I think that there's a lot of thought going into this, and I think that you guys should be supporting them. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Trish Leonard. I'm a resident of Bonita Springs off of Matheson. I also own a business in Bonita Springs, and hopefully we'll have a office at the Barron Collier project. I was promised before Tony. And I'm also the president of the Bonita Springs Downtown Alliance. And I could tell you that majority of the business owners that come to our meetings want to know when the project is going to get started. When are the shovels going to go into the ground? And we keep delaying it. It's not going to help us. We need to have the businesses downtown, and people are talking about traffic. And a lot of that traffic, if you ever sat down and tried to have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine at the Downtown Wine and Coffee, you can't hear the person you're with because of the big dump trucks and the trucks that go by there and all of that. So, it should also be considered a walkable downtown. And that's one of the things that we need, to discuss at another time. But I urge the council to just finish the project. Let's get started. I have 10 gold shovels I am willing to loan you if you would just say yes today. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish.
They're not real gold.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Hello, City
Morning.
Council. My name is Kyle Moran. I first moved to Bonita 30 years ago, and I spent every day in the downtown. And I do want to start by thanking you for really superhuman efforts among this council and your staff for hurricane relief. Our community suffered unspeakable, heartbreaking tragedies, but I witnessed firsthand the incredible efforts that were made by city staff, and a lot of whom had damaged themselves, so we're forever grateful for that. I also want to thank you. Derek made it very clear in the last meeting. In fact, he said he hired something like 6 different attorneys to advise on different aspects of this lease. In the public record, our auditor commented on the lease. In the public record, our real estate expert, CBRE, commented on the lease quite favorably. And it's clear, too, as they listed 15 improvements that they made just in the past 6 weeks to the lease, all improvements to our city. So as a council and as a staff, it's your job to make sure that our city progresses and is protected, and thank you for doing that exceptionally well. Yours is a very tough job. I remember sitting in watching meetings when we were talking about improving the roadscapes in the downtown, these beautiful roadscapes with their medians and pedestrian crosswalks and things. And there was a commenter then, these people that only see the glass half empty, who said you can't do the project because you're going to restrict the road widths and we will not be allowed to have or able to have 4th of July parades. It sounded silly then, but it was completely ridiculous when you actually saw this year's 4th of July. A 4th of July that surpassed all expectations of what our community could do and how it could come together. So that concern was not only wrong, it was misled, and it turned out that we have great strength in our community if we're able to activate it and bring it together. And that's what this downtown project is about. It's about community and commerce and shining a bright light on the city of Bonita Springs. Yes, there are people that are spreading misinformation. They'll tell you things like, well, you're putting too much density there. There were 135 trailer homes there. We're talking about 120 apartments. There are people who tell you that you're going to create a congestion issue with traffic. That's not destination traffic coming and going to the downtown that goes through there. It's big, heavy trucks, like a previous speaker said. We can do things about that. They say you're going to create parking issues. The city's already created 660 public parking spots down there. And at their last meeting, approved another 45 parking spots. And we have plenty of room. They'll say it's going to flood. I was downtown there at 7 o'clock at night in the storm. There was some flash flooding over the river. Chartreuse had 6 inches of water. They're reopened for business. The FEMA flood maps were exactly correct. What FEMA said should flood, did flood. What FEMA said wouldn't flood, didn't flood. And your city has also invested in lots across the street from this project on Phelps Avenue with an acre plus of stormwater retention. And you've invested in water infrastructure down there, and it worked. It's a huge investment for the taxpayer. Probably $50 million over 20 years. And to date, we haven't seen the returns from it. But this project, when you approve it, it will give us a big return. Yes, of course, in dollars and cents, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, but also for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Next. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Blum-Rosen. I wasn't expecting to say anything on this issue, but listening to everybody, I need to. I live at 26235 Hickory Boulevard in District 3 of Bonita Springs. And I'm very interested in history. And I think you are all part of, well, first of all, let me echo the consensus that you guys did. You all did an amazing job during the hurricane. Arlene and Matt, thank you. Lee County Sheriff's Office, Pasco County Sheriff's Office, Hollywood Police, Red Cross, I notice is here, and the Salvation Army were totally amazing in helping me get all the way 2 miles behind the police checkpoint. But, you know, your history, you represent the past. You've been working on this very hard. They're amazingly difficult challenges, which have been exemplified by everybody who's spoken before me today. And if this plan is as good as some people say, it will be good after November 8th. Let the future make the decision. I'm not representing anybody else, but I have been asked to put on the record that there might be some notice matters, but I don't know about those things. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. If you people line up, if you're going to speak.
I'm sorry, the line is out the door. I'm Bonnie Whittemore for the record. Very proud to live in Bonita. When I came here, it was almost like a generation ago, and now you're the generation that has to make decisions for those of us who are coming after. There's not enough money to pay me to do your job. But I will say, we're on the cusp of an opportunity. I represent a lot of history. I'm trying to preserve everything about Bonita, as well as play along with the new. And I think we have an opportunity with a broad spectrum of the abilities sitting right there to get what we really need to happen. I mean, a generation ago, a lot of us didn't even live in this town. That was a dumpy old trailer park. And now it's vacant land. We're expanding outwards, but now it's time to look inward to what we can really do with downtown. We have some opportunities, so I'm hoping you'll give this really serious thought and think about the possibilities, so 20 years from now, we're not sitting here thinking about, oh, we own this land, what are we going to do with it? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. For the record, Dwight Esmond, Paradise Road area. I'll make it very brief. Yesterday morning, I emailed all of you a list of 13 questions that I think you should be able to answer before you vote on this proposal. In case you didn't see the email, it's in front of you. It included the list of must-have and must-not-have that all of you agreed to insist on being in this project. I'm not going to waste your time by repeating all the questions. The people in cyberspace want to know, they can go to next door and search for posts by Dwight Esmond. I hope you will get all the answers, but there is one that is more important than all the rest, and it is, if you're going to vote for this deal, please tell the people why and what facts you use to arrive at your decision. I think you owe the people that much. And I can't help myself. I just want to mention that 18 months ago, I spoke to this council about an idea of a hotel on one side of the property. I believe and I think that the majority of town planning experts would agree that that type of project is more likely to achieve the results that you want to see and that the majority of people want to see happen on this property. Thank you, and thank you for doing a great job with the hurricane.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing everybody to be here today and state their positions. My name is Don Thompson. I live at Kent Road here in Bonita Springs, and I've been a resident of Bonita Springs for over 50 years now. I'm here for myself and my wife, Kim, who was born here. My message and request to Council, and as the previous speaker mentioned, I think we were here pretty close to 15, 16 months ago, giving you these identical messages or similar messages, is please stay the course. As I had mentioned before, I used to catch the bus to get to school on Old 41 back in the early 70s. And believe it or not, that was our only north-south arterial in Bonita Springs. In fact, it was the only north-south arterial here throughout southwest Florida in this area. And believe it or not, it was kind of a thriving road, or we all thought it was back then. In 1976, New 41 was built. and it totally took the wind out of the sails of Old 41. And I can tell you, and I think most of you know this and have heard from others, that business owners and residents have been trying to bring it back to life ever since. And it's been a long job, but it's working and it's going forward. And fortunately, your council predecessors, some 15 years ago, came up with a plan. And fortunately, not just for the bamboo project, but all of Old 41. And thus far, your predecessors and you and your staff have followed that plan. You've required a lot of projects to follow that plan that have been built or are being built now. There's been a lot of time and effort expended by many, including, I know, this council, and including a lot of the folks who own businesses and residents and the like here in Bonita. You adopted the form-based code so that people would know what they're allowed to do. So far, the city has spent tens of millions of dollars to get the rejuvenation going, of which redevelopment, including the bamboo project, is supposed to pay for. Property and business owners have been required to follow the plan and have followed the plan. People have purchased property, they've purchased businesses, they've started up new businesses, and a lot of people have been sticking their neck way out for a lot of years now because of the plan that this council elected to pick some time ago. I suggest it's fair to say, but for that plan, there's a lot of folks that wouldn't have purchased property, started businesses, and bought some of the old businesses and changed them into something new and better. I don't want to belabor the point, but I urge you, please stick to the plan, stay the course, proceed with this project. I know folks want to, it seems like every time we've been here before you, it's put it off, put it off, put it off. It's only a couple more months or whatever. But it's not that. It's years and years and years that people have been pushing for this. And if we put it off, I think it's just going to continue to be put off. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Jim Magnus. I live in Bonita Springs. We've been here for over 30 years. First, like to thank staff and council for all the hard work you guys have done over Irma and hardship for so many people. And you guys have certainly made life a lot easier for many. And our family certainly appreciates that. The other comment I'd like to make, I know that you guys have been listening to about the Barron Collier project. You've got a quality developer. I suggest you stay the course. This council, the staff, and the mayor have spent, if you add up all the hours of all you guys together, you guys have spent thousands of hours over the last couple of years on this project. Stay the course, make the vote today, and we would like to see the project move forward. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Michael Galvin. I'm a resident of Bonita Springs, permanently for the last 4 years, previously part-time for probably a dozen years. I've seen several proposals come up and be shot down, whether they're not financially feasible, etc. I think we've got a great opportunity with the Barron Collier proposal. That area has been fallow for too many years. I think it's time for us to move forward and keep Bonita the beautiful spot it is, and also move forward with some progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Mr.
Call for a
Mayor,
vote?
Well,
we have a roll.
You had a motion on the floor, but I believe there were some questions or any other comments. This would be the time before the vote.
Yeah, let me make some comments. This lease agreement is not the final step in this whole process of developing the Bamboo Village project. It's a set of rules by which the development goes forward. It talks about, what the rent payments are going to be, what the duties are of the city, what the duties are of the tenant. But if you look through the lease agreement, there's several ways in which the parties can exit. One of which we talked about today was the financing condition that's put in there. If Baron Collier finds that because of the change in the market, they cannot finance this, then this project exits, and we have to basically look for another plan, another solution. Remember that the city still retains ownership of the property. It still has to approve through the permitting process what gets built. When the final plans for construction are submitted, CBRE will come back through and make another analysis of the construction and the financial viability of the project in order to protect the interests of the city. Signing this lease agreement does not put shovels in the ground. Shovels go in the ground when the final plan is arrived at. All we've seen so far is a concept plan. Okay? That concept can change, and it can change rapidly based upon what's going on in the market with respect to construction costs and with respect to financing. When I was a kid, the big theme of the TV shows were Westerns. One of my favorite Westerns was Wagon Train, okay? So Wagon Train was all about getting this group of settlers from St. Joe, Missouri, out to the Oregon coast, okay? Well, we're not in Colorado, we're not in Kansas, we're not in Nevada, we're at St. Joe. There's a lot of work that's got to go on in order to get this wagon moved along and get this property built. And what we need to do that is for everybody in the community to continue to express their views and opinions on what this thing will look like, but do so in a way in which we're coming together as a community to get this project done. And so I would hope we've all had the ability to issue our own comments. It's been in the newspapers, it's been on the emails. But, I think it is time to make a decision and make a time to vote on this lease agreement, which I call a tool, to get this project moved forward. So just remember that, the city is protected in this. There's ways in which the city can find a way to exit. There's ways in which Baron Collier can find a way to exit. But remember, when this all started, CBRE told us this was an unproven market. This is a difficult thing to do. I think it's a good thing to do because Baron Collier is a very strong organization. And in my mind, if anybody can pull this off, it's them, okay? But that's not a guarantee it's going to happen. So let's all continue to work together. Let's give Baron Collier the benefit of the doubt. Let's listen to what they say and let's move forward and try to get this thing moved off the ground zero and make Bonita Springs the dream that we want to see it come into. So that's my comments.
Any other comments?
Motion to approve.
We already have a first and a
We have a
second.
motion on the table.
Mr. Mayor, could
approve.
you ask for a roll call?
Call for a vote?
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
What was that?
Mayor Steinmeier?
Yes.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, folks.
Good City Council. Thank you for your vote of confidence. And Councilman Corey, Mayor, fellow City Council members, we're going to do exactly what Councilman Corey said. We're going to continue to work with the city and the members that are out there. We'll continue to tweak it to make it better. It's been a tough last 4 weeks with everything going on, and Arlene took our calls, and didn't realize you lost your home until we had that conversation. So our reputation means a lot to us, and we want to work with you. So we look forward to moving this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Casa La Guada.
What did he say?
Okay, well,
All right.
thanks, folks. I appreciate your comments. I really do. City Attorney's report.
Okay, the next item, Mr. Mayor, is a first reading of an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, revising Section 7.02 Compensation Plan of the Administrative Regulations Guide, providing for severability, conflicts of law, scrivener's errors, and an effective date. Mr. Mayor, what this is our charter requires that our personnel policies and plans with respect to compensation be included in an ordinance form. We learned from Hurricane Irma that in order to seek reimbursement for emergency pay, that is the pay in which the staff is doing work outside their normal operations in preparation for, during, and response to an emergency event, FEMA will reimburse us, but that needs to have very clear policies. So what we've decided is that this is the first reading. We'll bring it back to you at your next meeting to an adoption. Arlene has already authorized the pay for all city employees, so the only one who would be excluded from that is Arlene herself because she's a contract employee of the city, but everyone is already getting their pay, and this ordinance will be adopted so that we can seek maximum reimbursement.
They certainly deserve it. Yes, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I thought about this one for a while last night, and being in my position with the congressman, I've dealt with every city manager in our region, and I think Arlene Hunter has done a great job. I hate to exclude her, so I don't know what the exact process would be, but I'd like to add I don't know if it's an addendum or how it would look logistically, but I'd like to see that Arlene is included in the pay that we're giving the rest of the city. I think it's well-deserved.
If that's the will of the council, we'll have it
Yes.
done by the next reading.
You could just add it in there, and that's just so we could get FEMA reimbursement. We could just give her a bonus.
Clarify would be exactly what the other employees are that's FEMA reimbursable.
Okay, so whether or not it's FEMA reimbursable for Arlene, we could just grant her a special, I'm very much in favor of that. So Derek will tell us how to do it.
Okay. I'll make sure that gets included.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, city manager's update. Are we up to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Council. If you would give us opportunity, I think each of our directors who worked through the storm have a brief update on our city operations, pre-preparation, during severe weather storm activities, and then our post-recovery. So if we could start with Tony Backhurst to give us an update on our procedures. I'll have each of them come forward and give you a little update on how we're moving forward with recovery efforts.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. For the record, Tony Backhurst, Director of Neighbourhood Services and Emergency Management. Every year I've stood in front of Mayor and Council and explained the emergency management preparation, usually in May of the year. So this is kind of where theory has gone into practice, so I kind of want to give some background on that. I've written down the dates because, to be honest, a lot of them are merged in dates and days, so I've written it down to jog my memory. So September the 27th, the city basically went into the FEMA model, which is Incident Command Structure, which is ICS. So we had an Incident Commander, which was Arlene, then we have PIO, which is Laura, and then it goes into 4 sections, which is Planning, Operations, Finance, and Logistics. So that's how it breaks up. So on the 27th of September, staff went to the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, to represent the city, and also to the South Geo Division, which was the fire department. Throughout that period of time, other staff, we were working on preparation as well, which is, there's software which is done to facilitate information to FEMA, which is through, and I'm going to use acronyms and I'll try and explain them, FIDA and IDA, which is following the response, following the emergency, how we respond. FIDA is First Impression Damage Assessment, so that would be down power lines, flooded areas, inaccessible areas, and this is an app that the first responders can put this in, and as soon as they put it in, it will populate, and at that point, those in the EOC can see on a screen how the information is actually filling in. The second is IDA, which is initial damage assessment, and that is on property. And what that does, it puts it into different categories, and I've got there's a whole little booklet here on how it's assessed, and it's done on the habitability of the structures, and it goes from destroyed down to unaffected. So on the 27th, we've got staff in preparation. They're at those two locations. Everyone's in communication. Our staff are doing run-throughs on this software to make sure they're up and running, so that prep work has already been done. On the 28th, which was the storm, still the staff had stayed overnight on the 27th, and then they did through the 28th. We're all in constant communication. Those that weren't in either of those locations are also in communication. We were in meetings throughout the storm, and I'll give you an example. At 1:45, there was a meeting that the EOC had run on potential pod locations, points of distribution. So they would come up with potential locations within each jurisdiction, and so obviously with the unknown element of where is going to hit and who's going to be most affected, we have a variety of different things, and there was multiple meetings throughout the day, so we were in constant communication. The storm obviously lasted considerably longer than anybody had anticipated, but as soon as it was safe to do so, our first responders went out. We had fire department go out, law enforcement, all of the first responders. But on the morning of the 29th, which was that Thursday morning, as soon as it was daylight, we mustered at City Hall. And so we, at that point, then went into put everything that we'd done into actual action. So we've been doing the initial damage assessment, and the first impression damage assessments started at that time, within hours pretty much of the storm passing through. And the importance of this is to get that information in, and now it can be done in real time with something like that. This drives the FEMA resources. They can look at a visual representation of each municipality and location where was hit first, where's been hit the worst, and that way. But you have to get we call it pins on the map, and they're color coded, and any of you who've looked at you can see how stark it is. You can see obviously from the coast moving in, and in Bonita along the river as well. So I'm just going to give you some numbers, and I'll try not to bore you, because actually Brenda, who is currently at the EOC, has been providing me with numbers via text, so I can give you the most accurate stuff. We've got 90% of our initial damage assessment done for the city, which was pretty good. On October the 1st, which is a little more than 48 hours after the storm had passed through, we actually had an activated pod through our partners at the EOC. National Guard came. We were providing essential items to residents on that day. That first day, 5,144 residents utilized the pod. And throughout the entirety of its time, 20,000 residents went through and used that pod for food, water, ice, and tarps. That doesn't include the other fantastic agencies, the American Red Cross, Salvation Army, who've also come, and we'd met some of them in the field, and they'd asked what locations do we need to go in to help. So there was the mobile aspect to it as well. Tarp distribution, just to give you an idea of it, the EOC has been fantastic in providing us with different stuff. The tarps, 10 days after the storm, we were then anticipated to get rain. They provided immediately 1,200 extra tarps to this area, and our staff have been out when they're doing the damage assessments, providing these to residents who need them and handing them out. And those 1,200, there's approximately 50 left, so thousands of tarps have been distributed to the residents. Within this system, it's information, and whenever I've stood in front of you, I've explained the importance of the information and the funnel in and funnel out aspect of it, getting the information to the people that need it. We've done daily situation reports. You may have seen some of them. The shortened form is SITREP. The importance of the SITREP is basically to say the objectives, achievements, the major issues that we're dealing with and problems, and our current situation, and then our unmet needs. This is done every day. We provide that to the county, who then are utilizing the resources through state or beyond. So I'm going to get to some of the numbers here. City staff to this point has done inspection on damage on 16,577 properties. This is accurate as of this morning. The current estimated loss, and these numbers are going to change, this is just current to now. The current estimated loss for Bonita is 564,841,918. So we're around 565 million. We've currently got 25 destroyed properties, 1,354 with major damage, 1,536 with minor damage, 3,498 that are affected. So you can see, and the numbers are going to completely alter again. They're going to go, and it's constantly changing. And I'd just like to say, thankfully, under Arlene's leadership throughout this, and in the years prior to this, she's given us the ability for every single staff member within the city is FEMA certified. So when this actually comes, and it's hard to prepare for something with the magnitude of this, but thankfully everything did come in and work, and we broke into those groups, and this is going to be ongoing for a considerable amount of time.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
One thing I do want to recognize with Tony's team as well is I wanted to thank our Parks and Recreation staff. While our park facilities were closed, they came in and worked with Tony's staff on the damage assessments so we could get more boots on the ground as quick as we could. With that, John, could you and Aida come forward and kind of give a wrap-up of how we're moving forward with the building assessments and building permit fee waivers?
Good morning.
Morning.
Probably about 48 hours after the storm had passed, our inspectors were out doing their initial damage assessment. They started out along Little Hickory and started looking at those buildings at the very north end of Little Hickory and working their way south. We were out there basically the same time as the search and rescue from the fire district, so I think we had pretty quick response. Thanks to Tony's staff, they had worked for that damage assessment mainly along the river. We had worked along the coastline, and we met somewhere around 41 to get most of that done. He had said 90-something% of the city had been surveyed already. Those areas that we believe have been affected by the storm or possible damage have already been done. We're leaving the areas we suspect to have the least amount of damage to the end. So most of the areas that we think are going to have to report something have already been reported. We have also reopened our permitting our permit counter. We've transitioned some of our inspectors to going back to building inspections, and for those that apply for permits associated with hurricane damage or repair, those building permit fees have been waived. So there will not be a fee for those. Aida is here with me. She is our floodplain coordinator and actually was looking at the maps that we just adopted a week before the storm to see how they all stacked up. But she has a little bit of information on how that is going to come into play and our now infamous 50% rule. So.
Thank you, John. Aida Lonergan, the city's floodplain manager and one of your structural building inspectors. As John alluded to, our staff has, while we're continuing the damage assessments along with code enforcement for the recovery efforts, we've also shifted gears to how best support our residents during their permit application and restoration permits. Of course, we focus and prioritize those restoring power, getting the necessities back into their lives. We're also actively working on that reach out and fielding the phone calls on assisting them to best maximize their flood insurance payouts, including those that are going to be required to elevate to a higher set of standards. In the middle of all of that, we're also making sure that we are actively encouraging them to follow the new flood maps and any changes that will be going into effect in less than 30 days. The flood maps that FEMA released will become effective November 17th, and there are some modifications to those. So we certainly don't want our residents to waste time or expenses on designing a plan that may not be able to be approved in the next 30 days. Do you have any other questions as far as the city's floodplain management program and our response that I can assist you with?
For the public, can you just go over the green and red tags, just so that anyone who's watching now will know?
Yes. During the are what's commonly referred to as our initial assessments, our windshield assessments. Building inspectors and code enforcement do a initial exterior assessment of a structure for its stability. So we're looking for life safety issues. Was the electrical dislodged? Can it become a hazard both to life safety and to responders if it were re-energized? We're looking for foundation cracks, significant scouring marks. We are not engineers, so it is a external preliminary investigation. We placard those buildings based off of what those visual observations are. They may include a red tag that we saw something that indicates significant structural damage. That could include an electrical room on a ground floor in a condo building, and now the entire electrical service is laying on the ground. It may include scouring or foundation cracks, balconies that could become a fall hazard, blown out windows, destroyed first floors. We have different degrees of our tags. The red tags are, you really need to be concerned. This may be an unsafe building. Other notifications, which are the yellow tags that we placed on buildings where we see some damage, but we're not seeing really anything that's going to keep us up at night. All of our tags and placards include all of the contact information for all your local utilities, responses, FEMA, power company, water company. In addition to that, they place a notification that says, we've seen damage, but as a property owner, it is your responsibility to contact an engineer, an architect, or a licensed contractor to further investigate. There's always going to be damage that can't be seen from an exterior of a building, or after the storm, while we still had some high water, not all of those damages were visible during the initial assessment. So as a property owner, they still have an obligation and responsibility to follow up on that placard to make sure that their building is safe.
Have you condemned any properties to be destroyed?
Now, the process for condemning a building is a much different process, legally speaking. At this time, during an initial assessment, we can simply we have the authority to mark it as an unsafe building, that we see enough damage that we don't feel it's safe to occupy. They still have the right to go and get an engineer and propose repairs to make it habitable, to restore its safety. This is not a condemned process. That would follow up later should they choose not to hire an engineer or an architect to inspect the building.
Okay, any question? Yes,
Do
Amy.
you want to talk about the 50% rule, and is it on the website? I haven't checked.
Yes, we do have more information on the website now, and more is following. The city is required to, as part of its participation in the National Flood Insurance Program and our community rating system, tied in together tightly with the Florida Building Code, that we have regulations references substantial damage, substantial improvement, more commonly referred to as the FEMA 50% rule. What that rule in summary says that if you have a structure, whether it's commercial or residential, that does not meet the current code requirements, we are required to review all improvements and repairs to just the building over the course of a 5-year period. Should the cumulative total of those repairs over the 5-year period meet or exceed the 50% mark, at that point the building is triggered that it must be brought into current compliance to the regulations, which may include elevating the structure.
50% of the value of the structure.
How does that work with today's prices on a building that's 40 years old? That doesn't seem fair.
So what happens in the way that we calculate that, we actually made those revisions about 2 months ago to our current flood ordinance. We have two options to establish a building's current market value. One is that we utilize the property appraiser's assessment value for just the structure, because we look at just structure values. FEMA doesn't care about land values. So we're looking at that assessed value for the structure, and we add 20% to that number to help bridge the gap between an assessed value and the market value. Should an owner disagree with that number, they have the right that they can provide as a private appraisal that would show just the structure's valuation, which is basically a depreciated replacement cost value. We will use the higher of the two numbers for our calculations. So when an application comes in, since it's a 5-year, it's a very fluid process. So every application will review all permits to that structure over the last 5 years, including the current application. So we run that set of totals against the previous permits, against the current building valuations.
Let me give it another slight modification on it. So a lot of these improvements, and people need to be careful about them, if they're making improvements to shore up, to do repairs, they should be careful about making other improvements that may be, say, more voluntary. And I'll give you the example. Let's say a building is worth $15,000. It's an older building, it's a small building, $15,000, but it needs a new roof. A new roof costs, I'm just playing with numbers, but say it's $10,000. Okay, they're outside the 50% rule. In 5 years, that $10,000 gets added to the original building. Now the building could be valued at $25,000. So if they were deciding that they wanted to do a gut and put a new kitchen in at the same time, they had a little bit of work going on, they may trip the rule and require the entire building to be structured. But if they stage their improvements to deal with what's needed today and do other improvements over time, they can gradually bring the entire property closer to code without tripping that requirement. And it's the tripping of that requirement that really sets a lot of people off, because it's not just the elevation of the building. Florida Building Code would require electrical, everything has to be redone. So
Who gives them the authority to demolish somebody's home?
So in the case of, there's a couple different procedures for demolition, but generally what would occur in a situation like this after a storm is the property would be declared unsafe. That means no one can be in the habitation unless they're able to rebut that argument from the city. Now, if somebody goes and decides they're going to live in there anyway, then the city would accelerate the process under an emergency, essentially condemnation. We would take down the structure so that no one's staying in there, and we get an order to do that. But the longer, more general approach would be that it would start through code enforcement, and we would get an order determining the building is unsafe, and we would move forward with demolition and a more measured approach. Now, right now, you have to be very cautious about how fast you move with that, because a lot of people are waiting for insurance adjusters for payouts, they're waiting for materials. So the most important thing is that the structure itself, if it's unsafe, is not being habited. That's the most important thing to deal with.
Correct. And just so that we say this, no one is looking to take down structures. We have been actively working with people to tell them how the 50% rule works, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. Our goal is to help people get back to where they need to be. It is not to demolish buildings. But along those lines, besides when is my power going to be turned on and how do I get a permit, this tends to be one of the most frequent phone calls we get, and to the point of maybe 100 to 300 a day along those lines. To do that, we've had people in the office every day, but we've kind of gone to a 7-day-a-week schedule. We don't have the permit counter open on the weekend because the goal is basically to answer questions. So there'll be people there from building, from planning, to be able to address those. So you don't have a question that comes in Friday night or Saturday morning that doesn't get addressed until Monday, because by the time you get to Monday, now you're up to about 500 or 600 messages that you have to address. So we'll be doing that for a couple of weeks to see how it goes. And once the phone calls start to level off, we'll probably go back to normal operations and actually give some of the staff a weekend. But
yeah, are they compensated also under this plan?
Well, it's a different arrangement. However, no one is working more than 5 days a week. What we've done is we've shifted when those 5 days are. So we have people in the office 7 days, but each individual staff member works 5.
That's covered under the contract that we have. That's
okay. Very good. Any other questions?
One of the things we wanted to clarify is that you did have mobile approvals of power.
Correct.
Electrical
Yes.
approvals
Thank you.
Both weekends.
We went through a couple of fits and starts with FPL power restoration, but we had someone assigned to us, Tim Knox, was fantastic. I cannot talk glowingly enough about him. He started working out on Forester, and they started going door to door, turning on transformers, checking meters, trying to get the power back on out there, and I found it to be very successful. They worked their way through. The first day they didn't bring enough meters. They got most of Forester done. By that Sunday, they got as many meters as they could. They finished King's Q, Queen's Q, and had started working on Bay. The following week, they started working, half the crew was working to restore lift stations for BSU along Hickory. The other half of the crew was doing line repair. Once the line repair was done along Hickory, they started working to restore power. So I found it to be probably one of the most efficient restoration operations with that much damage that I've seen.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, yes. At this time, would Laura Taylor come forward? She's our PIO and had direct contact with Lee County's PIO and the Lee County Sheriff's Office PIO through the process.
Good morning. Laura Taylor, Communications Director. So as Arlene said, we did work very closely with Betsy Clayton and her team from Lee County Emergency Operations Center. During a hurricane, the city shares Lee County emergency management messaging and coordinates with Lee County Sheriff's Office and Bonita Springs Fire and Control District. So year-round, we do produce content educating residents of where to follow us and to get information. Excuse me. The city uses the e-blast system, the city website, Bonita Television Channel 98. We do media interviews, flyers, city signs, press releases to communicate about an upcoming storm. I'd like to thank our IT manager, Addison Smelko, as the city's IT infrastructure did not falter, neither during the storm or afterwards, which enabled our staff to continuously work. Also, the communications team, Debbie, Caressa, Logan, and Vince and Antonio for their commitment during and after the storm. Arlene, Matt, and I have been active staff before for Irma, and it's quite a learning curve when you add new staff members. So this year we also had Caressa and Addison and Carly join us to be active staff and staying the night over at the fire department, which is quite a learning curve. And I just want to acknowledge the commitment of those staff members, leaving their families during that time and staying with us to get the information out. I really appreciate that. Excuse me, I have a little cold. So our staff worked to get information out prior to the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. Most of us stayed here even after the storm trying to get the information to our residents. There were 20 website news stories that were put out that also went to our mobile app. That was about storm preparedness, the state of emergencies, evacuation orders, comprehensive daily updates, access, flood risk, and assistance information. There were 15 e-blast advisories emailed to subscribers between September 27th and October 12th. That went to 24,164 subscribers. There were 150 storm-related Facebook postings. And then we also worked with public service announcements with many of you. So we'd like to thank you for your commitment and your support to get the word out to our residents. It was very helpful to us to have that kind of support from you. And we just really appreciate that. We had 15 Nextdoor postings, 2 press conferences with mayor and council, city manager, fire, and Lee County Sheriff's Office, 2 Facebook Live updates with our deputy mayor, city manager, and also fire chief and Lee County Sheriff's Office lieutenant. Our deputy mayor did do some local and national interviews. We had News Nation Now, NPR, and Arlene did MSNBC. We worked with a lot of our local stations to control rumor control. Some of the rumors that we heard were the city was adding additional water to the river. When we were trying to put out information about sheet flow, we did have some residents get very concerned with that. Rightfully so. It was a scary time for them with the Imperial River, but we worked hard to talk to the news stations to educate about what sheet flow was and that it's a natural phenomenon that happens after a hurricane, and that we really just wanted our residents to be aware that it could continually keep the Imperial River rising. And then Deputy Mayor Gibson did a fantastic job when he came out with us to help rumor control. He actually went out with Antonio to the river and talked about what it meant, helped to educate and to calm folks down to show what the levels were at that time. So we appreciate that. And then we had Councilwoman Carumba helping to educate on hers about how people could connect with us to get information, which is a vital component of after storm communications. We also worked with Councilwoman Carr to talk about beach access and where the pods were located in the city directly after the storm, and Councilman Forbes, who talked about resources and how folks could reach out to nonprofits to get food that was being prepared. And out in Rosemary, he went down and did some live updates there. So this was really an entire team effort, and we are so lucky and glad to have a team like this that will work with us together to get the information out for our residents. So thank you.
You guys did a great job, but you forgot Congressman Byron Donalds also came.
He did,
right?
that's correct, yes.
Yeah. But everybody in staff was phenomenal, phenomenal.
Nicole, if you please come forward and kind of talk a little bit about recovery and the insurance claims you've been working through.
Nicole Perino, Parks and Recreation Director. As Arlene had mentioned, immediately after the storm, the Parks and Recreation staff did switch roles and went with Tony and his team to do the initial damage assessments. Those included lifeguards to maintenance staff. But again, we are all FEMA trained, so it kind of fell into place as to different roles people did. What we have been doing is I've been working with our Florida League of Cities for our insurance to do our damage assessments to all of our city facilities as well as park facilities. And once we get those assessments finished, we do start mitigation of those facilities. Our insurance company has been great so far of getting us the resources we need and getting them out as quickly as possible for mitigation of, flooded facilities and the things that require immediate attention. We are continuing to work with those damage assessment teams, as well as once those assessments are done, our adjusters come in, so we are working with our adjusters as well. And then we'll eventually be switching into recovery mode of build back of damaged assets. So that is what we have been working on, as well as most of our parks have reopened. So the recreation center, the fitness room has reopened. The hours are limited because we still have resources out in the field. The community pool opened yesterday, so that is back open to our community. We do have some facilities that are going to remain closed for a little while just due to they have sustained damage that we haven't been able to get to, or something that's a little more extensive that's going to require additional time, such as boardwalks that are twisted and mangled, and Cullum's Trail is still underwater. So some of those things we just won't be able to get to see all of the different damages to the facilities. Also, we did get Tony into his temporary home. So our staff has moved our neighborhood services department to a new location, as well as the staff. We did work with the National Guard when they were at the pod location at the old library. So we did go in and assist the National Guard with getting that set up at that location. So
Code enforcement's at the old library now?
Correct. The Lyles Hotel is under mitigation. It did flood, so we will have to come back to you with some cost estimates. Was that, and then our insurance coverage. So Nicole and Laura together will be working through all of that. So we'll have to come back with further reports on that. So as a temporary location, Neighborhood Services has relocated to the old library at this time. So there is some minor modifications to that building we had to do to accommodate them, so we're working through that. Additionally, Nicole, if you want to share, we did house 40 Pasco County
We are
Sheriff
still
deputies.
housing, yes, we, in our recreation center gymnasium, that's why the fitness room currently is the only part open. We are housing 40 Pasco County Sheriff's deputies who are assisting our own community policing of patrolling the beach areas and patrolling different areas. So a huge thank you to them for coming and assisting our team, our Sheriff's Department, and we are happy to house them in our gymnasium. But I mean, they have a pretty good setup with their own mobile kitchens and things like that to help out. So that has been a huge help.
You're working through an agreement with FEMA.
Yep. We also, I have been working with FEMA. We are working on an agreement with them to have at the smaller recreation center building right next door to house a disaster recovery center in the city of Bonita Springs. So we are working through an agreement with them right now to see if we can get that up and running as quickly as possible.
That would help a lot.
Yep, we have been working with them. I think the agreement's pretty set, so we should be seeing that coming online in the next couple of days to week.
Very good.
And additionally, we did use our recreation center gym as a cooling and Wi-Fi station.
Yep, as
directly
a
after the storm for anyone who needed it.
Yep, and as well as we used it for the big rollout of the beach access permits. The gymnasium was utilized for that as well until it moved over here to City Hall.
Anything else?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Lisa, if you could come forward and kind of discuss how we utilize, with internet service being down, our administrative team.
Yes, it's impressive, well, to realize what our communications department did and how they pushed out information, but what we found out as local residents, if y'all stayed in the area, our local communications infrastructure was decimated. And the way we were able to still communicate was word of mouth. And as soon as the administrative staff, it was safe for us to get on the roads. We were in here Friday and all weekend answering the phones. It was hard to talk to them. Quite honestly, a lot of them were people who were trying to locate family out of the area, so we did a lot of safety calls, and we were able to not only talk to them, answer them, but then we called them back to make sure they found their person. Those were interesting calls as well. I mean, it was scary to be on the phone with them and talk to them as we went through it. But what we found out, there were so many people who had, if they had evacuated, they evacuated locally, and then they didn't have the ability to know when they could get back on the roads, if they had evacuated via the plane, when they could fly back in. So we were able, because our infrastructure here was working, we could log online and look at the airport, tell them about what was going on, tell them about when they could get back in. And that kind of spawned a little bit of communication with the residents on the island, because a lot of them were very concerned, expressing concern to us that they had not been able to really secure their property. When could they fly back in? When could they get in? How could they get their people out there to board up their properties? So we developed a list. Again, we were just working the telephones, calling them, telling them about the things with the road, with the county, and the fact that the sheriff's presence were there. And I think that was just, again, for them, when they were able to get in and see what was going on. And so many people who came in who had, really lost everything. And then they had to, sit there and talk about how they had to secure their property. And it was quite moving. And the fact that we were able to be at the rec center Saturday and Sunday morning at 7 a.m. to help, and their contractors were grateful. We were able to help so many people get out to the island and be able to just, still work with the residents and make sure that they were able to secure their property before the road was completely opened up to everyone. I know that was kind of controversial, but we heard the needs of what, the people, and people were so nice, they were so appreciative. And a lot of people that sat down to get the beach permits, they were actually, they moved to tears before they finished the process. So it was just to see face to face the people that were impacted, and to be able to talk to them and be their lifeline when they didn't have internet and they didn't have cell phones. So when everyone was in here working, that was really a beautiful thing to see. I mean, even in a disaster, in a horrible situation, the humanity and the people coming together, I thought was really nice.
Things are better in Bonita.
Yes, yes, they definitely are. So we issued about a total of a little over 1,800 beach permit passes, and every staff, every department, community development, everyone, every staff, Lent staff, we all were there 2 days, 7 a.m. Saturday and Sunday at the rec center. It was just everyone coming together to make sure people could have access when they needed it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And
Anything else, Arlen?
Yes, last but not least would be Matt Feeney with an update on
No.
our streets, our roads, and our debris.
Public Works?
I'll just keep it simple. We coordinated, with everybody under the sun, Lee County Natural Resources, water management districts. We're concerned about the possibility of riverine flooding. And then really Lee County DOT after the storm, they had their hands full. So, we kind of let them know about some of the damages down here on Hickory Boulevard and, coordinated some emergent repairs that they performed to get the road open for the residents. We had some damage ourselves on Harmony Lane that we were able to take care of. Kind of like Nicole mentioned, there are some things that we have not been able to assess. I know of some road damage that out on the beach that we'll get to later. Right now it's traversable, but it's going to take some time. Primarily, as the storm, was winding up and coming through, we were making sure that our disaster relief contractor was going to be able to mobilize expeditiously. They were on site just a few days after the storm, and we've been picking up debris ever since. It's right now somewhere around 80,000 yards have been picked up off the streets, and we'll continue to do so and continue to bring more assets in as we need them and haul it off to get people in the recovery phase.
Where's all this stuff going?
It's a great question. All you got to do is head north. It's at the intersection of Coconut Road and US 41. There's a very large co-located debris site there that includes Lee County debris. Obviously, everything coming off of Hickory Boulevard specific is primarily is from Lee County. And then, our flood damage as well as Estero, they had flood damage and horticultural damage. So all three of us are co-located there at that site.
Okay, very good. You've got experience with this, I know you do.
Too much.
Too much.
Just a couple wrap-up items. I did want to thank the mayor and council for your confidence in staff in allowing us to execute those executive orders. They're very helpful as we move through the process. I wanted to remind everyone that Bonita Springs still has a curfew on Bonita Beach from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We are still coordinating those efforts with the Lee County Sheriff's Office and with their partners, Pasco County and Hollywood PD. So there will be maintained a north entryway gate checkpoint during our curfew hours and a south check gate point during our curfew hours as well. We've expressed that as well to Lee County as it is their roadway. So we've shared that information with them. We will be continuing to share recovery information regarding your FEMA opportunities. Anyone who has been impacted by the storm, whether you have insurance or not, please take advantage of that opportunity for your individual assistance. It's available for 60 days after the storm. We're working, as Nicole said, to have the recovery site here, but there is one in Lee County at Bass Road, and there's also one in Collier County. We have all of those addresses on our website. You can also call us at City Hall to be able to receive any of that information. We will be coming back with a reprioritization of our capital improvements and making some suggestions on projects and ideas as we go through this recovery process and what we need to look at for financial forecasting with the fact that we are going to pursue all applicable FEMA reimbursements, grants, or programs. If you'll work with us on deadlines of that, if we feel it's an opportunity, we'll notify you and hopefully ratify that within council meetings so we don't have any missed opportunities. But Lisa will be working closely to kind of look at our projections. I did see that Lee County government put in some funding mechanisms for some pre-authorizations for loans if needed. We'll be bringing all that back information to you as we continue to look at estimates and our costs up front, and then reprioritizing where our capital improvements are with you as well. One of the things we're hopeful that you'll work with us on is I did notice that the Lee County School Board looked at their advisory committees, and they are not holding any attendance or accountants. One, because folks in the community have had their own personal issues to contribute to, but so they're not holding any attendance issues for their committees. They're still able to meet, but kind of having a laxed look at those. And you're hopeful, unless it's storm-related or land use related, that you'll give us some leniency in those volunteer committees as they move forward as well. So we're going to be looking at prioritizing all of our goals, to become in recovery as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to postpone the committee meetings and board meetings till the end of the year, with the exception of land use, of course.
How about Small Business Administration?
Yes, FEMA has the ability for you to apply for small business administration funding, that you can make that in person at the Bass Road location or in Collier County, or on the phone. You can call the FEMA hotline and they can connect you to those resources.
And you can get reimbursed for your lost employment because of the storm?
There is individual assistance programs where you can illustrate that if you have wage losses directly impacted by the storm, there's an opportunity for you to see if you qualify for those. There's also individual assistance for lost belongings, vehicles. So if you feel in any way that you take advantage of the opportunity, please do so. Please make that outreach to them, even if you have your own insurance as well.
Thank you very much. Mayor and City Council reports. Any reports? We had a storm.
No, it's about the storm anyway, if I may go.
Okay, go ahead.
The past 3 weeks have been a very difficult time for our beloved city. We again are faced with an extended recovery from a damaging storm. We are both filled with sadness at the suffering and losses we see around, and inspired by the resilience and determined efforts for recovery. I am grateful for the very fine leadership of our city management team in the persons of Arlene Hunter and Matt Feeney. Note should also be made for each and every Bonita Springs staff member and first responder who work 7 days a week and countless hours a day away from their own families to help us all. From the property inspections to the assistance and intercessions with FEMA, FPML, and BSU, from assessing the damage to comforting those with losses, our team could be counted on to do the job. Though we still have a long way to go, we know that beautiful Bonita will return to the paradise we loved. Bonitas, thank you for your being stalwart, for being kind, for being patient, and for helping each other. Thank you for providing encouragement to all of us and supporting the effort that lies ahead. May each day be a bit brighter than the day before, and may we be Bonita strong. One more. May God bring his special blessings upon Bonita Springs, and remember our sister cities of Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Estero, and Lee County, who are also in need of our prayers.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I just going to echo Amy and Laura Taylor. She pretty much covered, and Nigel covered all the thanks, but I'd like to add a thank you to our great governor, Governor DeSantis. He's been phenomenal. He has been here constantly providing assistance in forms of aid, tax cuts, checks, and of course his lovely wife, Casey, who's doing an awful lot with such kindness and assisting folks with regard to mental health issues. So, you know, our whole state has just been wonderful.
Yes, Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I want to add to all the kudos about first responders. The fire district also performed a yeoman's job in this, and both rescue and helping out. They were really good. One other, a small point, and I'll get to the main point. Sheet flow happens all the time that we have more rain or a lot of rain. You don't have to have a hurricane. You don't have to have a tropical storm. It comes all the time because our DRGR is kind of the bottom of the bowl, and the water's all trying to get to the Imperial River, which is its drain outlet. So remember that. What I've witnessed in this is really the people that suffered the worst had the best positive attitude about the recovery. I mean, they're really, never talked to one person that had a major loss that wasn't real optimistic about the future of Bonita, their future, and all that. So I think that's a lesson to learn about this. I saw a lot of good things. I'll give you one example, and I've got a couple things I'd like to see us try and do. Right after the storm, and there's a lot of stories like this, I'm going to get them out to all of you because it brings out to everybody the good things that went on by the not just John Q. public all pitching in. But there were two ladies that were out shopping, ran into some of the line crews from other cities and states that were in here immediately following our disaster. They were talking to them, telling them how much they appreciate them. They said, is there anything you guys need? And they said, yeah, we only have 2 changes of clothes. And if we worked for FPL, we'd be at their staging area, and they got a laundry service. But we don't have one. Can you help us? So the 2 ladies organized 114 people. They did 2 loads of washing a day for about 12 days. And they also, the line crew said, is there any way you could arrange for a few snacks? So everybody with their clean clothes that they got every day got a bottle of Gatorade, snacks, peanuts and Nabiscos, and then homemade cookies and all that. And the interesting thing is they gave me a list of all the different communities or countries, places that serviced. We even had line crews from Canada that they actually did laundry for. But they had at least 12 organizations that were in here that they were doing. And that was only the ones that were in Bonita. And you had a whole bunch of them up at Cape Coral. One thing I would like to see us do, if possible, I don't know, anything we can do, if it's legally possible, that FEMA might be able to reimburse us for paying community development to work longer than 8-hour days on issuing permits, hurricane-related only. Hurricane-related only. That would be a good thing because there's nothing more frustrating to somebody to be waiting for a permit when they need to get something done in an emergency. So I think if we could do that, that would be a good thing. And that concludes my report, except I saw a lot of really the top best behavior by a lot of residents. A lot of people went through a lot of things. And one more thing. You've heard of the Berlin airlift, where there was a truck airlift from a truck convoy from the East Coast over to Bonita Assistance. The person that worked this out wants to remain anonymous, but they brought all kind of supplies donated from the East Coast, Fort Lauderdale, over to Bonita Assistance, and that really helped a lot. There's a lot of good stories. Feed Thy Neighbor and all. Everybody that was local charities have been working hard to help our residents, even the YMCA. Thank you.
Okay, my turn?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. With the storm, you never know how important leadership is until you need it. And I will tell you all that in my capacity with Congressman, we have both Collier and Lee County. What we have in Bonita is special. It really is. From a communication standpoint, to the level of assessment that we've already done, to the fact that we're open actually processing permits. I mean, there are cities, and I won't even get into the names, they were 4 days until they heard from their city manager. There's been some real issues. And each time I just found myself counting my lucky stars that we have Matt and Arlene at the helm, because if it was our city, in all of Southwest Florida in both counties, that's who I would want at the helm. So, you know, it really puts things in perspective. I guess you don't know how nice and fancy your car is until you take it out and drive it. And, you know, we took you guys out for a spin, and you've done one hell of a job, and people really need to know that. Number two, in regards to the storm as well, I was just told the Sanibel Causeway opened a few hours ago. So that's good. There is going to be, for the people in any district who might need this, just a little bit of information. If you were displaced by the storm, there is direct FEMA assistance available to you. There have been some people who have been running into issues because there's a lot of renters, especially Fort Myers Beach and other places that got wiped out. They go to get the FEMA assistance. They can't get the FEMA check because the property owner has already applied for that, right? So what people don't know is all you have to do is produce your lease. You produce your lease, you give that to FEMA, you're bumped to the front, the landowner's off of it because you're in a contractual lease for that. So you can get, if you're a renter and you were unable to get your direct assistance because you were told your landowner got it, you actually have the ability to get that money if you provide a lease. So if that's helpful to anybody, I hope you know, you try to get that done. Additionally, tomorrow night, 6 p.m., McGregor Baptist Church, 3750 Colonial Boulevard in Fort Myers. We'll be doing a property restoration town hall. So not only the congressman, but we have the head of SBA, we have NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program, Small Business Administration, FEMA, the county, and the state. And we have them all in one spot. So then that gives all the people who have been displaced or who have been having issues getting to any of the sites where you can do this stuff, we have everybody under one roof. So we've done 4 of these now. Each one has been pretty much full. So if you're in a situation where you haven't been able to get to those folks yet, you have an opportunity. I'll say it again, 3750 Colonial Boulevard, Fort Myers, Florida, tomorrow at 6. And last piece, you know, in regards to the vote today for the downtown, you know, today we delivered on a promise that our Bonita Springs forefathers have discussed for 20 years. Today, October 19th, 2022, the talk and the discussions have stopped. Today we delivered. Bonita Springs, you will have the downtown you deserve. So tell somebody over there at the Downtown Alliance to get the shovels ready. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, Chris.
I attended Rotary this morning, and the new executive director of the Wonder Gardens was there to give us an update on what was happening at the Wonder Gardens. And he was effusive in his praise of the city and staff that worked hard to help the Wonder Gardens recover from the surge. And he couldn't say enough about the help that the staff did with respect to everything that the Wonder Gardens needed. There is another cleanup day at the Wonder Gardens on Saturday. The Rotary plans to have a lot of people there, but if anybody else in the community would like to help out, they could use the help. So I just wanted to mention that. I also want to encourage people, we're 3 weeks after the storm. Please stay patient. Being an accountant, I play around with numbers. And last week, the Naples Daily News reported that 205,000 cubic yards of waste have been picked up, and that's 125 football fields. There's 4 million cubic yards to take care of. And if you do the math, imagine Interstate 75 from Bonita Springs to Bradenton on both sides of the road, covered in 3 foot of trash. So we have got a lot to do. I would encourage gated communities such as my own, Bonita Bay, to seriously think about pitching in and helping out with the cleanup by seeing if they could contract with some of their own contractors to do the pickup. Might not be FEMA reimbursed, but it would help the people in your communities, and it would help to lessen the strain on the contractors like Crowder Gulf that the city and the county are using. So I would encourage you to do that.
Anybody else? Yes, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a trying few weeks, but I just want to echo everybody's thoughts up here and thank our staff. Everybody's done a great job, working tirelessly through all this, and we're very appreciative of that. So thank you.
My turn. Well, the benefit of the storm is I had a locker at the condominium. It was all filled up with stuff, like a whole lifetime of stuff, all gone, all cleaned out. The locker's gone, and then my car was all filled up, and that's gone. So I'm a fresh start, and I don't have to worry about getting rid of all that junk.
Right.
So Bonita is amazing, and the people are still have the spirit of love and cooperation that we need under these circumstances.
And I also heard this morning that FDOT has successfully repaired temporarily the 4 passes and bridges that get from Hickory Island to Fort Myers, but discourage anyone from going out.
And
it's for essential workers, and so, but so we can get movement going.
Right, but it's also a 9 to 5 limitation.
7 to 7.
The movement up and down to Fort Myers Beach is 9 to 5.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were talking about Hickory.
The curfew is 7 to 7 on Little Hickory Island to protect the people from looters, and it's very well enforced. Okay, we got, we down to public comment? Yes, sir, hurry up, we're ready to get out of here. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, neighbor. I'm glad you removed your car from our property.
Yeah.
I'm Stephen Blumrosen. I live at 26235 Hickory Boulevard, District 3. And this is why I came to talk to you today. But I really need to reiterate my appreciation for some of the amazing things that happened that helped me personally as a resident of the high-rise buildings at the far end of the island. One day, I got a ride from the sheriff's deputies, 2 of them, and they had water and food, and they actually carried the water and food up to my condo for me. It's just one example of how I think they went even beyond what somebody could expect them to have been doing. On the other hand, I had a little red wagon that was looted, so I couldn't carry my stuff out so easily. Unlike the mayor, I'm kind of grateful that I did have time to go back. There were, for the first days, we didn't know if the buildings were structurally sound or if they would be condemned, and I really wanted to get the remains of my mom and dad, and so I'm grateful to everybody who helped me do that. And I prepared a statement, but forward-looking. I believe in capitalism. Oh, and by the way, I attended Byron Daniels' town hall a couple of days ago in Naples, and it was very helpful because he brought together all sorts of people. It was not political. In fact, I commented to him how deep and thoughtful he was in person compared to the way he is on TV. And he's there in Washington, he's representing us, and I think he is a very good representative. He can talk to people one-on-one, maybe even the President of the United States, who I understand has been pretty helpful in his own way. So, I believe in capitalism and democracy. Capitalism can create useful products. The city of Bonita Springs should encourage capitalists to innovate solar boats, so we can have ferries go across the bay. Smart innovation needs to be part of our recovery and rebuilding with lessons learned from Hurricane Ian. As you just heard, I live in that area on Hickory Boulevard. The city of Bonita Springs, just the other day, reached an agreement that allows vehicles, I think Laura was talking about this, allows vehicles to exit Fort Myers Beach to the south, which would be toward us. This means the vehicles will be driving on Hickory Boulevard, which is in our district. Hickory Boulevard is still devastated, gray, relentless, and unforgiving. The sand dunes in the road have been pushed aside, and there's barely room for two cars to pass each other. Residents are already fearful of looters. Opening the bridge at the south end of Fort Myers Beach will open our road to more cars, more people, more looters, and probably some people who are hot rodding and speeding down that road that is hardly passable. Now would be a good time for innovative Southwest Florida to take the leap and become #1 in solar-powered ferry boats, so people on islands will not be dependent solely on bridges. How's that for timing? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, public comment? Come on now. Nothing else? We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.